to Sit Down with Sam. Tonight we have a special episode with Dr. Mark Reinecke, who will join me via Zoom.
Well, I'm happy to help. And I know all of us at CMI, the Child Mind Institute, we're happy to help. So it's a pleasure being of assistance here.
If someone is looking for help from the Child Mind Institute, how do they approach that?
It's actually quite easy. I mean, certainly if you're in New York or in the Bay Area in San Francisco, you can simply give us a call. Come in and see us. I would say the simple thing is just to give us a call regardless of where you are. And the nice thing about Child Mind is how would you put it? We will respond almost immediately. If you give us a call, what you would get is one of our assistants at the front desk. They'll talk to you for a few minutes to get a sense of what your concerns are. And then within a few minutes, they will talk to me or one of the directors in New York, and you'll get a call back. And so we try as best we can to be very responsive. The other way to reach us is online, childmind.org. And you can email us, you can look at resources online. And like I say, we try to be responsive as quickly as we can.
So, as a mental health professional, how would you describe the difference between a typical teenage behavior and an anxiety disorder?
Ha! Well, I laugh because people have thought of teen behavior as problematic for 500 years. And Shakespeare wrote about it. And so the question is, what makes it problematic? And the answer is not a whole lot. Most teens, the teen years, people talked about back in the Victorian era about Sturm and Drang, about all of this torturous thunderstorms of life in the teenage years. And the notion is teens are going through they're having challenges. They're shifting from being a child in a family environment to being an independent adult. And that is a difficult transition. That's really what adolescence is about. But the notion then is the large majority of teens get through this challenge just fine. And so a bit of patience and a bit of equanimity are, I think, the words of the day. We all get through this. My way of looking at this as a clinician is I try to help teens to get through it without permanent damage, without having a tattoo that you're later going to regret. And I mean that metaphorically, of course, something that you'll later regret. The place where we want to seek help is when it's really a clinical concern. If you are severely depressed or have suicidal thoughts, the phrase I would use with my students is that depression is not a normal part of childhood. When we see that ongoing, chronic, severe depression, by all means, seek help. Suicidality is not a normal part of childhood. If we see that, by all means, seek help. High levels of anxiety, social anxiety, to the point that it's crippling, where you want to not go to school or you have trouble in social situations, by all means, seek help. Better than 80% of clinical disorders that we see in adults have their onset in childhood and adolescence. So the notion that people will sort of automatically grow out of them, I think, is probably not true. My sense is that if something is clinically significant during childhood or adolescence, by all means, we should take it seriously, both because it's painful and difficult for the child or the teen right at that time, but also because it puts them at risk for ongoing difficulties off into their adulthood. So if it's severe, if it's ongoing, lasts for more than a couple of weeks, if it impairs function, by all means, we should let somebody help.
So there's a lot of different opinions, but what do people need to know about medication regarding different mental health disorders?
Well, it really depends. One thing I would say is that medications have a role in the care of emotional difficulties in childhood and adolescence. They are an important tool in the toolbox. They're not the only tool in the toolbox, but they're an important tool in the toolbox. And it really does depend on what the specific situation or concern is. If, for example, a child has ADHD, and we'll say severe ADHD, where they can't attend or they may be bouncing and overactive and moving around the classroom such that it's really impairing their social functioning and their academic performance, by all means, we should think about a medication consult and perhaps a trial of a stimulant medication or one of the other medications for ADHD. The consensus across mental health professionals is that medications are central to treatment of ADHD. On the other hand, if they're presenting with anxiety or depression, medications can be helpful, but they're not essential. They are not necessarily the first step. There, we might want to think about some sorts of evidence-based forms of psychotherapy or counseling, where, from CBT or DBT to behavioral activation, we call them the alphabet. They all have alphabet letters attached to them, but these evidence-based, well-researched, well-supported forms of treatment, those are probably the first place to start. Also worth noting, with younger children, school age, say 6th grade and below, but some with adolescents, a lot of the impact comes from working with parents. So that's where, having the chance to talk with parents, with mom or dad, about how they can create an environment at home that will facilitate the child being less depressed or less anxious, very important. So the way I look at it is medications are an important tool, but they're not the only tool. And you want to have, how would you put it, like working in the garage or in the workshop, you want the right tool for the problem that you're confronting, the task that you're confronting.
So when we hold events, a lot of the time we see many more women than men. Do you have any opinions or thoughts on that?
I think it really very well may be that there may be differences in the ways that mothers and fathers perceive problems in the family or perceive problems in the children, the resources that they think will be effective, there may be differences in what they think is helpful. There may be differences in acknowledging that there's a problem that we need to care for. There may be differences in what we call efficacy, this perception that I can control the outcome if I have additional information or take action. So there may be cultural differences in the ways in which groups think about mental health care and child development. And all of these things can influence the ways in which families approach mental health. I mean, what's worth noting when you think about it, you say, why is it that mostly women come to your activities, your events? Well, an analog question is, why is it that most clinical psychologists nowadays are women? It's 85% in graduate school. I'm not sure if that's exactly the right number, but I suspect that's right. About 80 to 85% of women getting PhDs in psychology now, or people getting PhDs in psychology now, clinical psychology, are women. Why is that? There are, in fact, gender differences in the avocations that people pursue and the careers that people pursue. And I wonder if those same sorts of influences that guide people to different careers are also the things that guide people to different sources of information. Why is it that women buy books more than men? And they show up at more seminars and talks than men?
What do you think is the best way to reach out to someone who is struggling?
Talk to them. How's that? What I would say is if a parent, you see someone who you have concern that they are slipping, that they're having a difficult time, by all means, reach out and simply talk to them. Now, how do we talk to them? In a non-judgmental way, in a way that doesn't reflect anxiety or fear. You want to create an environment where they can talk about what's on their mind. I noticed that you were doing X, Y, and Z. I'm wondering, how are you feeling? Are you all right? Tell me about that. I think even that sense of social connection, that somebody is there to listen, is very, very important. The second step then would be saying, you want to talk some more about this? Can I help? Simply offering help and assistance is a important step. And the third thing I would suggest is if it really looks serious, if, for example, you're talking to a friend and it becomes clear that they're having thoughts of death or suicide, what you want to do is encourage them to reach out. It doesn't have to be this way. There are people who can help. There are people who can get you through this. And, I'm your friend, but maybe it would be helpful to talk to somebody and guide them, make the handoff to somebody who really can't help them if it's really more severe. Don't say things like, oh no, you shouldn't stop, you shouldn't be feeling that, or oh no, you shouldn't stay that. That's a frightening thought. When you invalidate the thought or the feeling that they are experiencing, what's a person going to do? They'll close down. They just won't talk about it.
Yeah.
And so what you want to say is something like, oh, I can see why you feel that way. God, that must be awful. Basically, I understand how bad you feel, but I'm wondering if there's another way to look at this, and I'm wondering if there's a solution here.
Yeah.
So it's not just acknowledging and commiserating with how bad they feel. It's offering them the sense that there's a brighter future and that there's a way to get to that brighter future.
So you recently spoke at a Z-Care Step Forward event. Do you have any comments about working with Z-Cares?
Yes, it was fun. It's a pleasure. How's that? It's a great group, and I enjoyed doing it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark, for sitting down with me today. I think a lot of people will learn a lot of things and hopefully see Child Mind as a place that they can get help.
Well, thank you. It was great meeting with you, and thanks for having me.